Incredible Florist's touching act of kindness transforms disabled boy into a billion-dollar heir. Ethan stared at the modest corner store of Mrs. Johnson's florist shop wrapped in vibrant hues of lilac and peach blooms. His hands were sweaty with anticipation. Could he really step through those doors, knowing what it might mean? Tension gripped his chest as he pulled open the glass door. The sweet scent of roses enveloped him, a nostalgic reminder of sunlit afternoons working in his small balcony garden. But excitement twisted into doubt. What if they saw him only as the disabled boy, forever trapped and underestimated? Week after week, as he learned the art of bouquet crafting, his heart ached with conflicting emotions. With each passing lesson, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within, a chance at something bigger. But in the shadows lurked a persistent voice that whispered of his limitations. Would they ever look past his wheelchair when his fingers skillfully arranged the petals? While Mrs. Johnson smiled, her silver hair shimmering in the afternoon sun, Ethan wrestled with his fear of being just a charity case, a boy who dared to dream only because someone chose to help him. Evenings spent buried in old family documents began to unveil a hidden legacy. His grandfather and the whispers of the past painted a beautiful picture of resilience in bloom. Yet, with the secrets unfurling, the weight of expectation bore down heavily on him. Was he truly destined to reclaim the flower shop, a space brimming with history? Or was he chasing a delusion, an unreachable symbol of his family's struggle? Ethan clenched his fists as he glanced at his reflection in the glass storefront. Uncertainty clawed at the edges of his mind. Did he really possess the strength to stand up against the looming corporate giants eyeing the flower shop with greedy intentions? The rumors of a takeover shot daggers of rage and fear through him. He could feel the deadline approaching, a suffocating countdown of opportunity slipping away with every tick of the clock. Mrs. Johnson's voice replayed in his mind, her encouraging words a soothing balm to his frazzled nerves. But as the phantom of his grandfather loomed larger with each page turned, doubts flooded his thoughts. He remembered watching his mother work tirelessly, and the idea of failing her made his stomach twist painfully. Would she be proud of him or view him as a burden? What if he became yet another ghost, lost in the hustle, forsaken by his dreams? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. His heart raced, thoughts spiraling in chaotic circles as the gavel echoed ominously in his mind. The courtroom awaited him, a battleground where he could either reclaim his legacy or fall into obscurity. Could he overcome the prejudiced notions that paired disability with inadequacy? What if the lawyers, sharp as thorns, found a way to crush his dreams into a pile of withering petals? As he approached the looming courtroom doors, Ethan felt an insistent hunger for a sense of belonging. This was more than a fight for a flower shop. It was a struggle to prove he was more than just a boy in a wheelchair, to demonstrate the strength of his spirit and the passion that had blossomed within him. And as he stood on the threshold of destiny, a single thought burned brighter than all his fears. This was his moment. The moment when he would step into the light and challenge the shadows surrounding him, or risk fading away as just another name lost in the quiet history of Maplewood. Ethan drew a deep breath, the faint scent of roses grounding him just outside the courtroom doors. The chamber felt heavy, almost tangible with the weight of past decisions, victories, and failures. In an instant, he understood that this was not merely about reclamation. It was about asserting his identity, a proclamation that he was more than his disability, a declaration that he would rewrite his narrative. As he wheeled himself across the threshold, the muted chatter of onlookers faded. His heart pounded, echoing through the brief silence that enveloped him. The towering judge, the polished wood, and the sterile, severe atmosphere accentuated his vulnerability. But instead of retreating into self-doubt, Ethan embraced the moment before him, envisioning the shop filled with the vibrant colors of blooms, laughter, and future promise. This was his arena. The opposing legal team was formidable, seasoned lawyers dissecting the vulnerabilities of the inexperienced. Their attacks were swift, aimed not just at the case, but at the essence of who he was. How can a boy in a wheelchair possibly manage a business? Doesn't he represent a liability? Their words felt like barbed knives, intended to sever connection and cohesion. Yet he steeled his resolve. In those moments, his burgeoning experience in the flower shop flooded back. Every lesson from Mrs. Johnson, every petal placed, and each arrangement created became his armor. He felt his fingers tingling with the echoes of creation, reminding him of the artistry and passion he wielded. It was not just a shop, it was a lineage he had the power to nurture. He stumbled only once during his testimony, the weight of the judge's gaze making him momentarily falter. For a heartbeat, doubt clawed at him, but he pushed through, remembering the photograph of his mother, the way she smiled as she tended to her garden. She wouldn't want him to back down. I may face challenges, but resilience runs through my blood. My grandfather believed in the power of community and flowers. He taught me that what we cultivate together is worth fighting for, he declared. The onlookers shifted, perhaps surprised by the passion igniting in him. Time blurred as he spoke, his voice gaining momentum like a fresh spring bloom bursting through the thaw. The moments of connection floated in the air, the eyes that met his with understanding, the slight nods that signaled recognition. He felt he was beginning to transcend the label of disabled boy, peeling it away like the layers of peeling bark from a tree. As the judge called for a recess, a knot of nerves still danced in his stomach. But a surge of adrenaline coursed through him, fueled by the recognition that he was standing not solely for himself, but for generations past and the potential of those to come. He wanted to cry out, to share the dreams that blossomed in him like the vibrant flowers he crafted every day. During the break, Ethan decided to seek out Mrs. Johnson. She had been the beacon guiding him through dark waters. When he found her, she stood away from the crowd, eyes bright as she gestured him over. "You were brilliant," she said, pride in her voice wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. "But remember, it's not just about winning. This journey is yours. Own it." He nodded, a newfound clarity blooming inside him, a revelation that honoring this path meant integrating his identity with the legacy he sought to revive. But just as he embraced his resolve, his phone buzzed in his pocket. An anonymous message flashed on the screen. "You're still just a boy in a wheelchair. Know your place." Each word struck him like a thunderbolt, chipping away at his renewed determination, threatening to sabotage all he had built up in that moment. The ground felt unsteady beneath him, and the path ahead blurred. Could he truly face such relentless hostility, particularly so close to the finish line? The urgency to prove himself intensified. As the gavel echoed again to summon them back, Ethan realized this wasn't merely a battle for a flower shop. It was a struggle for self-acceptance, a defiance against every judgment, a proclamation that he would redefine what it meant to be Ethan. And with that understanding, he grasped his chair's handles tightly as he wheeled back into the courtroom, prepared to confront both the opposition and the doubts that lurked within. What did this mean for his legacy? He was about to find out, because the moment of truth had arrived. The court clerk's voice sliced through the air, demanding silence as Ethan resumed his position. The opposing counsel's smirks, carved into their faces like stone, only sharpened his resolve. He didn't come this far to let a few scoffing doubts unravel him. Yet the sting of that anonymous message clung to him, casting a shadow over his burgeoning confidence. Ethan felt the weight of the moment crush down again. He could retire into the comfortable space of his fears, or push through the fire that burned inside him, threatening to ignite passion into action. There was no room for retreat now. Too much had been laid bare. Every argument he had conjured, every heartfelt moment he'd shared, now felt vulnerable before a judgment that sought to belittle him. But he wouldn't bow. Taking a breath, he grounded himself by visualizing the shop again, the delicate balance of colors manifesting like a stunning tapestry across his thoughts. He replayed the images of his customers smiling as they carried a piece of their lives home with them, a fragment of joy he wanted to hold and share. Those who believe in beauty know its worth, he thought, allowing that brief affirmation to permeate his worries. The gavel struck again, and the judge instructed the opposing team to present their case. Ethan steeled himself, observing their movements, their calculated strategies. Each question they posed seemed deliberately crafted to expose weakness, as if their weapons were sharpened with malice. How will you ensure reliability? How can you manage logistics or client relationships when your condition restricts mobility? With every question, Ethan bit back the waves of frustration and anger churning within him. Tactics that sought to dismantle his incapacity were not going to deter him. Rather, they crystallized the truth he felt brewing. He had been conditioned in the flower shop to find solutions, to adapt to changing circumstances, a lesson learned amidst the daisies, tulips, and roses, all struggling for sunlight. "Your Honor," he found himself saying, his voice ringing out with unexpected vigor. "I may be in a wheelchair, but I possess unique insights into my customers' experiences that others may overlook. My condition allows me to cultivate a business attuned to empathy and understanding." Each word spilled forth, each thought pieced together with clarity, the adaptation revealing his strength. Now he began to realize how much all those times spent strategizing flower placements or selecting customer favorites had equipped him with valuable business acumen. He was not only a dreamer, he was a doer. "In a world that often overlooks those who appear different," he continued, "I embody the very essence of resilience and innovation. I am not defined by a limitation, but enriched by the perspectives it offers. The flower shop is my legacy, and I remain determined to achieve it my way." The courtroom fell steady, the air thick with a new understanding, as eyes narrowed, perceptions shifting. For the first time, he drew energy from curiosity rather than suspicion. Could they sense his resolve? Did the vulnerability that once marked him now appear as a coat of honor? Just as he felt the tide turning, a new challenge surfaced, the harsh remnants of doubt creeping in again as he considered the anonymous message. The anonymous voice echoed like a ghost, lingering at the back of his mind. Were they right? Was he merely a boy in a wheelchair, a spectacle instead of a businessman? Ethan's thoughts wrestled with the truth he had just articulated. He could not be reduced to their limitations. To do so would be to abandon that legacy he desperately sought. He had to decide, stand firm in his newly forged identity, or allow the naysayers to dictate his narrative. As the judge called for rebuttals, Ethan's palms began to sweat, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. The time had come to face not just the opposing counsel, but the very doubts that had clawed at him since he entered. It was a direct confrontation he wouldn't shy away from. He could sense the stakes rising. He was ready to fight for not only his inheritance, but for the man he was determined to become. With their attacks ringing in his ears, he smiled inwardly. This was more than a battle for a flower shop. It was his moment to carve out a space where he belonged, a space where he was Ethan, the entrepreneur. And just as he prepared to dive into his defense, a new message buzzed on his phone, the screen illuminating. You can't escape what you are. You'll always just be disabled. Now more than ever, he would need to draw from the depths of conviction within him. There was more at stake than he initially realized. This was not just about a flower shop or a court case. It was about becoming the architect of his destiny, one petal at a time. Would he rise to the occasion, risking everything for the future he envisioned? As he squared his shoulders, prepared to take the plunge, he knew the answer lay just beyond the horizon of this day. Ethan's heart raced as he felt the weight of expectations bear down on him. The gavel echoed again, and the courtroom shivered under the onset of critical scrutiny. This was his moment, not just to defend the flower shop, but to reclaim his narrative. With newfound fervor, he began his fight against the shadows whispering doubts into his mind. He focused on strategy. His strength lay not in what he lacked, but in his ability to adapt. The words flowed more freely now, forged in the crucible of his vulnerability. "Every arrangement in my shop tells a story," he declared, recalling the lessons gleaned from countless interactions with clients. "I listen to them, understand them. They come to me not just for flowers, but for connection and understanding, a human touch. What isn't measurable on a spreadsheet is the value of genuine care." His opponents launched into a rebuttal. Each line aimed to dismantle his convictions. They pointed to his disability as a barrier, a reason to question his competency. The hurtful jabs they threw felt insistent, like they were carving away at the edges of his resolve. But beneath their cynical lashes, Ethan felt something stir, a fire that ignited each time they deemed him inferior. How tightly woven his experience had been to empathy. The countless hours spent learning how to piece together bouquets that spoke universally of love, sorrow, celebration, and remembrance weren't just practice, they had become Ethan's light. In cultivating arrangements, he was also cultivating a business model rooted in emotional intelligence. He leaned forward, his confidence swelling with each heartbeat. "Your Honor, to manage logistics and client relationships, I don't need a conventional approach. I leverage creativity to produce extraordinary solutions. My disability hasn't impaired my vision, rather, it fine-tunes it. My life experience infuses my enterprise with sensitivity. It is my unique perspective that allows me to thrive in ways my competitors cannot." The opposing counsel paused, their expressions dimming, perhaps recognizing his stance held more weight than they anticipated. Ethan felt the moment shift. The tide was turning, and he could sense the uncertainty creeping into the opposition. But his inner turmoil remained. The echoing message loomed large, a deceptive voice that dared him to embrace doubt. "What if I fail?" it taunted. "What if I am just disabled?" Suddenly, the image of his flower shop came flooding back to him, its vibrant colors a rebuke to those whispers. He envisioned himself at the front counter, joyfully interacting with customers, each transaction steeped in understanding. What wasn't seen on paper, what couldn't be quantified, was undoubtedly vital, both to his business and himself. He felt the gavel strike again, signaling a break in arguments. But instead of feeling relief, a sense of urgency flooded through him. He knew he had to confront not just the courtroom, but that insidious voice inside. A floral artist creates beauty from nature's vastly different elements. Why should I settle for being seen as merely different? As the break encouraged murmurs across the courtroom, Ethan seized the moment to relight that flickering flame within. Could he use this platform to express more than just defense? It was time to educate his audience on the real value of understanding unique perspectives. Yet, beneath the resolution to speak was a burgeoning anxiety. Would his plea resonate beyond the skepticism? Did they see him as he saw himself, a visionary with much to offer? The thought rattled him, compelling him to question his conviction one last time before standing tall.
As the proceedings resumed and the judge called him back into focus, Ethan found the flicker of uncertainty replaced by a burning desire for authenticity. His voice would echo through the walls of the courtroom, not only to defend his shop, but to assert his identity. What he didn't yet know, however, was that his next words would set off a ripple that might change everything. Would he risk revealing a vulnerability even deeper than his struggles? With a new sense of purpose alighting within, he inhaled deeply, ready to embrace the unpredictable path ahead, one that could lead to self-discovery or ruin. What ripple effects awaited him as he stepped into the spotlight once more? Ethan took a steadying breath, feeling the air swell in his lungs, invigorating him like a fresh bloom opening to the sun. With every heartbeat, doubt battled against his resolve, but he had come too far to retreat into silence. He understood the implications of this moment, not merely for himself, but for others who navigated their paths with unseen obstacles. As the tension coiled tight around him, Ethan recalled a boy from the neighborhood, little Charlie, whose fascination with the flower shop had been contagious. Charlie would often wander in with wide eyes, absorbing every detail of texture and color. Ethan had watched the child struggle with his speech, the way frustration flickered across his face when he couldn't find the right words. It reminded Ethan of his own challenges, the moments where words eluded him, overshadowed by insecurities. But then he'd seen the switch flip when Charlie held a single flower, his fragile fingers weaving tenderly among the petals. The beauty transcended any difficulty. It bridged gaps that words couldn't. Ethan had once told him, "Each flower has a way of speaking, you just have to listen." Now, standing in front of the judge, those moments gave him strength. If beauty could unite them, he thought, then perhaps vulnerability could forge a new understanding. "My shop is a haven," he began, his voice shaking but growing steadier. "It's a sanctuary for anyone who feels out of place. I strive to create spaces not just filled with flowers, but with stories. Stories of resilience, love, and connection. I've seen firsthand how powerful a small gesture can be." The rumbling whispers in the courtroom quieted, and he could feel the collective breath held in suspense. What was he going to do? Here, standing exposed, he recognized the potential for connection far greater than any financial evaluation of his abilities. "I recall a time when a mother came in, desperate for a bouquet to celebrate her son's birthday. She had little to spare, but she needed something, anything, that spoke to her love. I designed a simple arrangement of daisies and greens, and with it a handwritten note she could personalize." He ran a hand over his heart, searching for the right words. That arrangement did more than brighten a room. It forged a bond in her family, reminding them of hope and joy even in their struggles. "Why will it not resonate with you?" he challenged the court. "Why do we place such rigid confines on what creativity can accomplish? My disability does not define my limitations, but rather amplifies my desire to innovate and empathize." He noticed the flicker of recognition in the faces of some jurors. It was as though they were reluctantly examining their preconceived notions. They had been busy stacking criteria against him, missing the forest for the trees, and he was determined to shift that perspective. But amid the swelling confidence, new anxiety settled deep within. What if the jury still failed to understand? What if it wasn't enough? Ethan directed his thoughts to his flower shop once more. The power in the shop wasn't just in the arrangements. It lay in every interaction he had fostered there. It was a collage of truth woven amidst the petals, revealing a deeper layer of existence that transcended a simple referral to numbers and spreadsheets. As he prepared to conclude, Ethan felt a weight lift. He was no longer just defending a business. He was advocating for authenticity in a world craving genuine connection. His eyes sought the judges, silently imploring for understanding that lanced through expectations. "Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at a crossroads between conventionality and sensitivity,"
he finished, his heart pounding defiantly against doubt. To see beyond what seems different, to embrace the richness of perspective, it's what we need today. This isn't just a case about a flower shop. It's a fight for understanding, a call to honor diversity around us. As he stepped back, a disquieting thought churned within. Could this openness fracture the very thing he sought to protect? The gavel was raised once again, and uncertainty loomed like the final petal poised to fall. What would the impact of his vulnerability be on his future? And would the courtroom heed the call of empathy? Ethan's heart raced in the silence that followed his speech. The weight of vulnerability hung heavy in the air, yet there was an undeniable flicker of something new: hope. As he stepped back, he locked eyes with several jurors, identifying a mix of intrigue and skepticism reflected back at him. What had begun as a solitary battle against his fears had morphed into a collective inquiry into the very fabric of understanding and compassion. The gavel struck, pulling Ethan from the spiraling doubts that threatened to consume him. The judge's gaze was piercing, yet Ethan felt a shiver of empowerment surge through him. He had not only defended his flower shop, but also unshackled a piece of himself in the process. The struggle had been daunting, but speaking aloud had rendered his internal conflict visible, both to himself and to the world. Walking out of the courtroom, the tense atmosphere began to shift. Sunshine bathed the streets in warmth, each step a testament to resilience. Ethan felt lighter, almost buoyant. He clutched his briefcase tightly, not as a shield, but as a reminder of all that lay ahead. The outcome of this trial remained uncertain, but he had unearthed a burgeoning truth about himself. He possessed a voice that resonated with authenticity. As the days passed, the ache of uncertainty began to evolve into a drive for clarity. Every interaction in the flower shop became infused with new meaning. He started organizing workshops, inviting anyone in the community to learn the art of floral arrangement. These sessions were not only about flowers, but rather about channeling individuality through creativity. He emphasized the power of expression, coaxing attendees to share their personal stories while arranging blooms, creating a tapestry of connection that had long eluded him. The attendance grew steadily, and Ethan found himself in constant motion, supporting each participant's struggle with their own voice. The vulnerability he had revealed in court had ignited something deeper, an urgency to promote inclusivity within his cherished space. He sensed that the shop was evolving, mirroring his own growth. A mural of past arrangements covered the shop's main wall, each image telling a story and showcasing the personal metamorphosis of every client who walked through the door. They didn't just come to purchase flowers. They came to discover facets of themselves they had not realized existed. Despite this progress, doubt still slithered through the corners of his mind. Would the jury recognize this transformation? As the follow-up hearing loomed, Ethan found the profound lesson unfolding before him. His quest was never about validation, but rather about self-acceptance. The balance struck between his insecurities and the truth he embraced offered him strength he had not previously accessed. As he sculpted his narrative, he leaned into the understanding that everyone faced unseen battles. The shop resonated with energy and vulnerability, yet an underlying fear accompanied this evolution. Would the officials regard his workshop as frivolous? Did they see the depth of intention behind his actions? In these moments of reflection, Ethan crafted a plan. The upcoming hearing wouldn't merely be about the flowers. This was his opportunity to challenge societal expectations once more. He would speak not just of the artistry, but of the impact, the connections formed, the lives touched. But just as he felt the spark of conviction, news came that unbalanced him. An anonymous complaint surfaced, questioning the legitimacy of his workshops and whether they obscured the true nature of his business. The thought that someone would undermine his efforts threatened to extinguish the flame of progress he had ignited. Facing this looming confrontation brought Ethan to a precipice. Every ounce of growth, every lesson learned felt like it was hanging by a single fragile thread. In the depths of this crisis, he understood one thing. The fight was far from over. An even greater journey awaited him. He had come far, yet it was the looming trial of truth that now demanded his full attention. Would he find the strength to stand firm against this anonymous opposition, or would the shadows of doubt cripple his hard-won resolve? Ethan stood at the entrance of his flower shop, the vibrant blooms beckoning both passers-by and his own swirling thoughts. The complaint had ignited a fire of vulnerability within him, one that he had thought extinguished by his evasions. Realizing how external judgment could so easily penetrate the sanctum he had created was disheartening, yet, paradoxically, it galvanized him. He would no longer allow the opinions of others to dictate his worth or the value of his shop. Shuffling through his notes from the past workshops, he noticed the heartfelt messages left by participants, many expressing their newfound confidence. The anonymity of the complaint now seemed to evoke an urgent need to mobilize those voices, pressing him to convert collective experience into a powerful retort. He could define himself, his work, and the importance of
vulnerability, but dreaded the thought of presenting that at the hearing. He immersed himself in planning. Ethan sketched a presentation that blended fact with emotion, his aim being to portray the workshops not as a mere business initiative, but as an essential part of his mission. Still, doubt dawdled at the corners of his mind. Would vulnerability be seen as a lack of professionalism? The question gnawed at him, pulling his focus from what mattered most. Over the next few days, he poured himself into preparing. Long hours filled with preparing his speech, rehearsing in front of his shop's mirror. Each repetition revealed underlying truths, not just about his business, but about who he was at his core. Ethan practiced weaving personal anecdotes into his presentation, reminding himself of the faces he had encountered, each person's story illuminating the power hiding in shared experiences. At dusk, when the shop began to quiet, he would take a breath and walk outside to where a knot of his fear had taken root. The sunset that washed over the street made him feel small yet resolute. For years, he had allowed fears of judgment and inadequacy to stifle his potential. It was time to confront these shadows directly. Determined, Ethan revisited the anonymous complaint and wrote a response of his own, addressing not only the criticism, but enunciating his vision. He detailed how each workshop was structured around allowing others a glimpse into their own narratives through the lens of floral art. It became clear that he had not merely been selling flowers. He was forging connections and nurturing self-discovery. He would present this document alongside his speech, an act of bravery even he could hardly fathom. As he drew closer to the hearing date, Ethan sensed the pressure rising, palpable in every breath he took. With each flicker of apprehension, however, a counterbalance emerged, an unyielding conviction to honor the space he had created for others, even in the face of opposition. Within the cacophony of doubt, a voice grew louder and bolder, one that recounted struggles, misunderstandings, and ultimately triumph. The night before the hearing, restlessness ruled him. Tossing and turning resulted in clarity. This wasn't just about defending his workshops, nor merely a response to a complaint. Most importantly, it was a pivotal moment for Ethan to reclaim his narrative and expose the richness of his journey. The next morning, he put on his favorite shirt, the one with the uplifting floral print that sparkled against his newfound resolve. He stepped out of his apartment, gripping his notes tightly, feeling the familiar rhythm of vulnerability intertwined with an empowering strength surge through him. As he approached the courthouse, emotions tightened in his chest. This would not just be about the complaint or the flower shop. This was his chance to advocate for resilience and authenticity in the face of adversity. But when a familiar face appeared in the crowd, a chill coursed through him. How could he proceed knowing this person? Unresolved history and expectations weighing heavily, the moment of confrontation neared. Ethan's heart raced as he prepared to face not only the jury, but the echoes of his past. What impact would this revelation have on him? This was where he had to either drown or rise. Ethan inhaled deeply, steeling himself for the challenge ahead, fully aware that the outcome could change everything he had fought to build. Ethan stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the familiar face in the crowd, Leela, the childhood friend whose presence had always elicited a swirling mix of warmth and trepidation within him. They hadn't spoken in years. Their paths diverged painfully after a misunderstanding that left him feeling abandoned at a critical juncture in his life. Now, as her eyes scanned the gathering, recognition dawned, and for the first time in ages, he felt the weight of both nostalgia and unresolved tension. Steeling himself, Ethan took a step closer into the courthouse square, determined that this moment would not be marred by their past. His heart beat erratically, a reminder that vulnerability could either be a catalyst for connection or an awakening of old wounds. As the crowd moved forward, Ethan found his footing. He adjusted his notes, the heartbeat of his speech echoing in his mind. The commitment to advocate for authenticity was louder than any uncertainty. Leela's eyes, however, lingered in his consciousness, probing deeper than he wished. Would she understand the work he had created? Or would she too fall prey to judgment, fueling his already bubbling anxiety? The atmosphere inside the courthouse was thick with anticipation, a theater of scrutiny. Ethan prepared to step onto the platform, acutely aware of the distinctions between himself and the audience. For months, he'd been gathered up in affirmations, a self-made cocoon against doubt. Now, he was an exposed nerve. He scanned the darkened room, noticing the expressions of skepticism, curiosity, and judgment. It reminded him that anything he said would be scrutinized through a lens of personal unease. With each deep breath he took, remnants of his past strayed into his consciousness, particularly a moment with Leela when she had insisted he pursue his dreams no matter the cost. That sentiment stirred within him now, a flicker of courage igniting against the weight of all that was to come. He had shaped his workshops to facilitate healing journeys, yet he found himself on the precipice of his own potential unraveling in the exposure of truth. As his name was called, he rose, nerves firing with each step toward the podium. The speaker's stand felt like a cliff's edge. Either he would leap or fall back into the shadows. With an unsteady but determined gaze fixed outward, Ethan cleared his throat. "Good morning," he began, the words tremulous yet resonant. "I stand before you not just as a florist, but as a person who believes that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a cornerstone of our growth and connection." He took a moment, gauging the room.
Searching for connection as he recounted the stories of workshop participants, painting a vivid picture of how flowers represented narratives of resilience. He could almost feel Leela's presence nodding supportively, urging him to push through the contours of discomfort and tap into the authenticity he had long championed. Then, just as he began discussing his response to the complaint, Ethan's eyes inadvertently locked onto Leela again. Her expression was inscrutable, split between wonder and concern, forcing him to grapple even harder with the ghosts of their past. Did she believe in him? Did she remember who he used to be? Despite the pressure, he continued with newfound fervor, leaning into the openness that had guided his work. Yet the primal instinct to retreat swelled within him, an urge to flee from judgment, to reclaim invisibility just as he had done so many years ago. But in that moment, defying his instincts became essential. He mustered every ounce of resolve to claim his narrative, not solely for himself, but for everyone who had ever passed through the door of his shop seeking connection. As he neared the conclusion, a thought struck like lightning. What if this moment was more than a trial? What if it was also a second chance to mend a bridge with Leela, an unexpected opportunity to address not just the complaint, but the rift between them? With a glance in her direction, Ethan raised his voice. "I invite you all, even those who doubt, to embrace the transformative power of understanding and connection before making judgments." The room buzzed as he made one last plea, determined that he wouldn't stay a ghost in the recesses of doubt anymore. This was about far more than just flowers. It was about healing old wounds,
forging connections and claiming authenticity. But as the murmurs of the crowd began to settle, he sensed an unexpected shift. Leela was rising, and the tension escalated. Would she support him, or would she challenge him, forcing him to confront everything he thought he had left behind? Ethan's heart pounded. A moment hovered between the past and the present, teetering dangerously as he braced himself for yet another unexpected turn. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as Leela stood, her movements deliberate yet hesitant. The weight of her presence spiraled through the room, snatching his words and replacing them with a suffocating silence. She took the microphone, her fingers trembling slightly at the edge, and for an instant, time stood still, a precarious balance between fear and profound connection. "Ethan," she began, her voice steady but laced with an emotion he struggled to decipher. "I've watched you from afar and seen how you transformed your pain into something beautiful. But standing here today, I can't help but reflect on how our paths diverged, how pain drove us apart." The crowd held its collective breath, their anticipation concentrated on this intersection of their lives that had gone unspoken for years. The pavement of his heart felt cracked under the pressure of memories.
Would this redemption push him further toward vulnerability or pull him back into the abyss of fear? She continued, her gaze unwavering. "When we were younger, you taught me not to hide behind walls. You reminded me how it feels to grow through struggles. I was hurt and didn't know how to reconcile. I'm sorry for that. Have you truly let go of your past?" Ethan found himself grappling with her words, and the questions swirled in his mind. Had he released the bitterness that had once woven itself like a vine around his heart? This unexpected confrontation felt like both a challenge and a gift, demanding he reflect on his growth. Clenching his fists, he struggled to find his voice, feeling the depth of their shared history, acknowledged that the hurt had roots deeper than he could have anticipated. "It's not just about letting go, Leela. It's about understanding how those experiences shaped who we are today," he replied, the tension in his voice illustrating the complexity he wrestled with. "You have every right to feel hurt. I struggled too, but I've channeled that into rebuilding." He recalled the workshops he had led, groups he had facilitated where he bore witness to others sharing their stories. Healing was never linear, and yet he couldn't help but wonder if he had truly processed his own. Leela nodded slowly, absorbing his admission. "Then let's build something together. Could we put the past to rest, not merely as an apology, but as a commitment to create something anew, something that embodies empathy and shared understanding?" The prospect felt electrifying, yet terrifying. What if they were to embark on a journey that dismantled the old structures between them, building a new chapter that acknowledged both the wounds and the growth? Yet still, he hesitated. This was a professional gathering, a place meant for serious discussions regarding his work. As laughter rang from those around them, he knew the atmosphere was charged, but a sense of urgency gnawed at him. The fear of retreat lurked at the edges of his mind, a reminder of the years spent spiraling in doubt. Could this be the moment he claimed both his past and his future? He took a deep breath, driven by a blend of fear and exhilaration. "I think exploring that idea could push not just us, but everyone in this room to grow. Vulnerability begets connection, and connection leads us to empathy, which is what we all need." Ethan's heart surged with a newfound hope as he turned to the audience once more, the energy palpable as they leaned in. Could he, at last, ascend the precipice of fear he'd often walked for years? Deep down, he felt the stirring of possibility bloom within him, ready to chart a course together with Leela in boldness. But just as the weight of their newly formed pact began to settle in, an impulse tugged at him. Was he already plunging into a reckless leap of faith? He met Leela's gaze, and amid the brewing tension, the question left him wondering what the future held. Often, the most significant breakthroughs came from confronting unresolved issues directly. Then, before he could fully articulate that uncertainty, a voice echoed from the shadows of the courthouse. "But can you both really let go without addressing the pain that exists? or will it always shadow you? Ethan's pulse quickened. Who was this unexpected challenger, and what truths could emerge from this confrontation? Would he have to confront not only the barriers he had with Lila, but also the looming specter of his own fears? Ethan turned toward the unsettling voice, recognizing the ambiguity it radiated, an undeniable echo of challenges he had faced in the courtroom and within himself. The unknown lurked just beyond the candlelight glow of progress, and here stood a voice that might unearth shadows best kept hidden. But retreat was not an option anymore. With a deep breath, he pivoted away from Lila's expectant gaze and faced the crowd, steadying himself. Pain is a part of our stories, he affirmed, finding strength in the vulnerability he had learned to embrace. It shapes us, but it does not define us. I spent far too long allowing the weight of others' judgments to dictate who I was meant to be, and I refuse to let that continue. He felt the heat of conviction surge through him, an electric current affirming the truth of his journey. Each workshop I lead, each flower I arrange, embodies this journey toward resilience. We face our wounds, but we choose to cultivate beauty amidst them. The act of expressing ourselves through creativity becomes a vital thread in the tapestry of healing. The murmurs in the courtroom transformed into attentive silence as Ethan spoke, his words resonating with a clarity he had secretly yearned for. Every person who enters my flower shop walks away with a piece of their story woven into each stem, each petal. I am not just a boy in a wheelchair. I am an artist, a storyteller, and a catalyst for connections that matter. I forged a path that offers a safe space for everyone. My past does not eclipse this potential. Lila's eyes shone with renewed respect, encouraging him onward. He continued, channeling the health of shared experience swirling around him. Vulnerability wasn't just an expression of pain. It allowed for transformation, growth, and understanding. Consequently, I stand here today not only fighting for my shop, but for the right to exist unapologetically, to reinvent the narrative that has followed me for far too long, he asserted, conviction crystallizing into tangible energy. As individuals, we are not defined by our physical appearances, our challenges, or the opinions of others. Together, we champion the idea that our differences tell stories worth sharing, opening the door for connection. As he spoke, the judicial atmosphere shifted. Curiosity rippled through the crowd, a subtle resonance settling over the courtroom. The opposing counsel, previously steadfast in their stance, now appeared caught in uncertainty as witnesses reflected on their collective experiences. Your Honor, in light of my recent workshops, I propose to not only continue fostering this safe space, but also to launch a community initiative aimed at amplifying diverse voices, Ethan began, his heart racing faster than ever, yet seemingly grounded. I hope to collaborate with anyone wishing to join, because this journey should be about community and resilience. His proposition hung palpably in the air, suffused with possibility, yet tinged with the unease of emerging consequences. Would the jury understand? Would they resonate with this vision that transcended financial metrics, rooted instead in human experience? The judge's face remained inscrutable, but the shifting mood in the room felt electric. Then, unexpectedly, Leela stepped closer, her determination unmistakable as she added, I would like to join this initiative. Together, we can push boundaries by sharing our stories and creating art. Ethan is onto something special here. Cheers erupted spontaneously from a few members of the audience, individuals who had found warmth in the conversational embrace of flowers. Leela's words breathed possibilities that strengthened the foundation Ethan yearned to build. The spark ignited within them represented not just their individual journeys, but a collective yearning for empathy and compassion. As the gavel sound reverberated, the judge finally spoke. This court values authenticity as much as it does accountability. Mr. Ethan, I commend your endeavor for promoting shared understanding. Your past experiences are now catalyzing potential not just for yourself, but those around you. Ethan felt a wave of exhilaration wash over him. This moment fortified the foundation of everything he had fought for. The legal walls separating him from his aspirations and the sore reminders of self-doubt began to crack, letting in light. As he left the courtroom, his heartbeat settled into a steady rhythm, but transitioned from chaotic vulnerability to enriched empowerment. The future of the flower shop and the community initiatives he vowed to launch felt like an exciting adventure rather than a daunting task. The shift toward internal acceptance formed an undeniable resolve, marking the turn of a new chapter not just for Maverick Flowers, but within Ethan himself. Standing alongside Leela, they shared a glance filled with mutual understanding, a promise to bridge the gap of their caste while embracing the potentials of today. What had begun as a struggle for his identity transformed into a movement for shared empowerment, advocacy, and creativity, a true coming into bloom. Through this journey, Ethan had achieved more than the revival of his family legacy. He had demonstrated authentically the power of embracing oneself and learning to transcend limitations, painting a beautiful tapestry of hope, resilience, and connection. The flower shop was now not just a space for selling bouquets, but a sanctuary for budding stories and flourishing hearts. And Ethan, once a boy confined by his wheelchair, had proven to himself and the world he was more than capable. He had stepped into his role as a true architect of transformation. Now, as he worked to set the tone for the initiatives to come, he smiled, feeling a pull toward new beginnings dancing on the horizon. Clarity enveloped him, knowing the narrative, the legacy of resilience he crafted with each arrangement would continuously unfold like petals in bloom, forever offering, forever evolving. This is the moment when we all need to act, to support connections that matter. You need to subscribe now so you can witness future journeys of personal growth and resilience. Leave a like now to continue fueling the algorithm that brings forth these enriching stories. Comment your thoughts about Ethan's profound journey and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need this inspiration in their lives. Stand with us because our stories begin where support meets authenticity. Don't wait even one more second.